Today's video is brought to you by the MR500 Ansel Diagnostic Tool for Yamaha outboard motors.
So here's our kit. I'm going to just carefully cut it open without cutting any of the gaskets in there, right? I don't want to cut any of those. So I want to make sure I cut this open nice and easy. Now I'm not going to take them all out. I'm going to try and fold this back because I want to keep the rest of them clean because we're not using all of them at this particular time. The head covers, I usually don't pull those off unless we have to. Of course, these head gaskets we're going to use for sure. But it looks like this is my seal here for this. Yep, that looks like that. And then there's a bigger O-ring for around the outside of this. It's one of these two. Are these the same size? These are the same exact size, so it's got to be one of these. So let's pull this off now. Get this O-ring out of here. And even though I clean this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this aside. Now I can hold this up to this to make sure I know I have it right. I'm putting it aside because I don't want, you see I put another rag on here, a t-shirt on here, because I'm going to get ready to put my pistons on here and my ring sets and everything, and I want to make sure it's spotless. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this out a little more first. I'm going to get in this groove, maybe even a little bit of sandcloth, clean this out real good, and then there's a snap ring here I'm going to remove. Let's see if I have my snap ring pliers handy. Have to switch them to the other side. All right, get the right tips on here now. So we should be able to just squeeze this. Wow, that's a tight one. Oh, that's bending. Seems like it's bending a little bit. Maybe I need to get them in there a little deeper. Yeah. So I think these are sticking out too far. So I shorten them up a little bit. Let's see if that gives me some more strength. I think we got it now. The key is, will it fly out on me when I... All right. So now we'll get our seal puller. We'll see if we can pull this out of there. Well, typically we use this seal puller here and we can pop this out, but this is a little tough to get in a vise or anything. So I have to hold on to this. That wasn't too bad. We pop that out. Put our seal puller back. So now we have our seal out. I'm going to clean this out the rest of the way in this groove, and then we'll get the new seal and O-ring in. Okay, I've got this nice and clean now. There are a few stains still left in there, but I wanted to get any little bit of corrosion, because you do get a little bit of moisture. It's the bottom of the engine, and when a little bit of moisture gets in there, it's going to cause a little corrosion, and we don't want the corrosion to be causing a leak or a lack of a seal between our inside of our engine and of course water getting in, or air, right? Because the backside of our crankcase gets pressurized every time that piston comes down on the two-stroke, and we don't want to be forcing air out. All right, so we got the groove nice and clean. There's a few, you know, you can see some stains in there, but at least it's clean. There's no crust to this. I took a little scraper, went through it, and a sandcloth, and then where our seal goes. So that's what we'll put on next, is our new seal. we'll start with that, and then we'll put our snap ring back in. So with our new seal, what I like to do is I like to make sure it's the right fit first, but then I'm going to put some of my famous silicone on here, and I got to get the right size to make sure I have a good fit. Now it looks like it might push in fairly easily, but let me get my silicone on there. I put it in the refrigerator because I was told it lasts longer that way. Let's see if I regret putting it in the refrigerator, because now it's going to be really thick, right? So let's see. So this silicone that I use, if you haven't seen me use it in my videos before, is a Motorcraft RTV silicone, and it's a little thicker than your average silicone, and it's good for the diesel engines, and that's why I like to use it. It seals off really well. Look at that. I don't even have any hard stuff to start with. Pretty cool. So I'm just going to get a thin layer inside here and a thin layer around the outside. That worked really good, leaving it in the refrigerator, because it still is soft silicone. So again, just a very, very thin layer. I don't want to build it up on here that it oozes out all over the place. You'll have a little bit of oozing out, but it shouldn't be a mess oozing out all over the place. You know, this stuff is thick, so just get a nice thin layer on it. Now I get a nice thin layer on here. And that's good. So we'll get this in place here. And let's see if it'll just push in. And yeah, sometimes they do. They just push right in for you. That worked out nicely. And then our O-ring just goes around the outside, our new O-ring. So this didn't get seated all the way, so I'm going to go ahead and get the right socket to go around here, big socket to just push it in the rest of the way. But first I'm going to put my silicone away. And back in the fridge. Okay, so I got the right socket here. Fits just on the outside. So we'll give this a push the rest of the way in. Now what's nice about having it this way is I can see on the other side how far I've gone. And now we're in place. So now I'm going to put a little thin layer of our oil here, and we'll install this on this side. That'll kind of help hold it in place. I'm also going to put a little bit of sealer. I'm going to put a little weather stripping adhesive on the bottom here, but I'm not going to crank this in all the way because we have to put our cap on. So we'll get that set up next. Almost forgot we were going to put our clip back in. Alright, clips in. I'm going to put a little bit of weather stripping adhesive on here and we'll get it around. Now I'm going to make sure this is clean. We didn't get any oil on this. The O-ring itself should seal it off, but just in case. Now I want to get a little oil on this seal. I do have some on the shaft, but I want to get some on the seal as well. Let's slip this over. So, you know, that's probably good enough. I'm going to line up my bolts, and I'll just go ahead and stick 2 bolts in there, just to keep it aligned. Also, it keeps things, because I'm going to start moving this. I'm going to start spinning this crankshaft each time I put a piston in. So let me tape this up, and then we'll get a couple of those bolts in there. Okay, so now we have the top bearing. The O-ring we already removed and cleaned out. Really good. And now we have a seal in here. So we're going to go ahead and take our new seal, right? Line it up. That's the right seal. Here's the old O-ring. So we can line up an O-ring to that. And that's that. So now let's get this seal out. Let's see if this will come out here or if we have to put it in the vise. Let's put it in the... We've got that seal out. Now we'll clean this up. Parts washer. So we also cleaned up the bearing on this too, so we're going to have to make sure we lube that really well after we get our seals in. So we don't want to put it on dry. We'll put some on the shaft and we'll get it inside there before we reassemble this one. Now there's where the O-ring goes around here too, we're going to make sure is clean, just like we did on the other side. And where our new seal's going to go in. So that looks nice. We'll put our seal puller back. Now let's get the silicone out again. Don't ask me why I taped it up and put it away so quickly. Probably get that from my father. He's always cleaning up. Every time we're working on something, he's cleaning up before the job's done. Again, just a very, very thin layer in here. Not much at all. Same thing on the new seal. It's actually too much. I don't even need that much that's on my finger. All right, push this in. Might have to get a socket. See, make sure I'm putting this on the right way. This goes this way. Yeah, that is correct. And it slips in nicely. Didn't need a socket for that one. And now the O-ring goes on in the groove. That'll seal off nicely. We'll get a little oil on our bearings in here. Now remember, this is my concoction with the with the mix, and I'm going to get some on the seal as well. And now this can go together. Make sure our bearing half's lined up still. Just give it a little tap. That looks to be all in place. We can put this back in place like we wanted to start with. Holes line up, we'll get a couple bolts in that. And we can put our gasket set away for now so we don't get it dirty. We'll keep it nice and clean. That refrigerator trick is working out good. I don't remember which one of you guys told me that, but learning just as much from you guys as hopefully I'm teaching you something too that was taught to me. Probably saved me from buying another tube of that stuff. I like to put my O-rings and stuff aside. I save them. Don't ask me why. I like to save things. Okay. Let's put all these gaskets back, cover them up, and put that aside so we don't lose them. Now we still have our nice clean surface here we can work with so that we can get our pistons over. Yeah, nice. So we have starboard side piston, and we have port side piston. So we have one that's clean, starboard side, that we cleaned up just because I was showing you guys, you know, the process. But now what we'll do is we'll get the other two port side pistons over here and clean them up. So I'm going to reuse this rag until everything's clean. So here's port side. And of course our damaged one, port side. All right, there should be one more. And here's the other port side piston. Cover the rest up so they don't get dirty. Okay, so let's put these over here. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these right in the parts washer. And then we're going to have to remove this one. So sometimes these can be a little brutal to get out when they're kind of heat in there for a while. Heat in there for a while, that's a technical term. What I mean is it got overheated, this piston. Not severely, this particular one, so it might be better. But I'm going to take my wrist pin clip out because this one's getting our new piston. I'm going to save it. They tell you never to reuse those, but sometimes you're in a bind, you got to get a job done. I've never had a problem reusing them. So now it's not pushing out by hand, so we're going to have to get the right socket on here and knock this through. So it's coming out without too much trouble. Let's see, I'm going to put this on the vise. So I don't want to ruin my socket either. It's only one that I'm pushing through. So now that I'm close, I don't want to lose all my little needle bearings. Now, did the new one come with new needle bearings? Good question. It did not. So we're reusing. So I want to make sure I catch them all here. So I'm just taking my time. Okay, these are caged, which is nice. We'll put that aside. And there's 2 washers. We're going to clean it up, but we know that the rod and everything is good. So now I'm going to knock this out the rest of the way. This pin is in really good condition, and we're going to save it for possibly someone who needs one, or another project possibly that has a bad one that we can reuse something. Actually, looking at it a little closer, it's got a little wear to it, so we won't save that. And obviously the piston is toast. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my raggage. So I'm going to have the dirty stuff where I take apart here. Now I'm only doing one, so it's not a big deal. I'm going to put this in the parts washer and clean it up. Alright, so now I know I've got this nice and clean. Now if you remember, when I labeled these, I put top and bottom, right? Port, and this is port bottom, right? So I know which way I put my piston in towards my exhaust. Now I'm going to clean up this bearing a little bit and re-grease it. So it is nice and clean now. We'll wipe it off. Sometimes the parts washer is a water base and things will flash rust, so I'm very quick to wash things off and dry them and then get oil right on them. So we'll get some oil on this bearing with my concoction here, or I should say the concoction I stole from somebody who taught me the right way to do this stuff. So now we know that's good. I'm going to put some on the inside of my connecting rod, slip it in, and I'm going to also lube up both sides of this because it's all over my fingies now. All right. So also going to put some on where my wrist pin goes in on my piston, and I'm also going to lube up my wrist pin, make sure everything's ready to go. Now we got new clips here for the wrist pin, and I have some excess on my hand, so I'm just going to put it where the rings go right now, because this is all going to eventually get coated before we put it in. All right. So what I want to do now is just double check and make sure that I'm going to put this in the right way. So I'm going in this cylinder, right? So it should be my bottom cylinder, right? Because that's the way it's labeled, bottom. And do I have enough room to put this in? Let me make sure I have my block situated so that I can slip it in. And it looks like I do. So this is going as an arrow here that goes to my exhaust port, which is always on the outside, the exhaust port. So this is going to go in this fashion, just like that. So if it's going in like that, I'm going to hold it that way. I have it labeled here port bottom, so it's going to go in here this way. So I'm going to put my top ring in and just start to slide my piston pin in and catch that first spacer, washer, ring, whatever you're calling that. Make sure it's lined up. And then I'll put the other side in, slip that in there, and then slide it through the rest of the way. All nice and oiled up. And now we know our wrist pin is in the right location, in the right orientation. And now we can put our circlips in. Now these circlips, I don't even know if I'm using the right term, circlips, the wrist pin clips, they can be a little tricky sometimes. They like to fight with us a little bit. So greasy hands doesn't help, but let me get another pair of needle nose. So make sure I clean off the needle nose really good. And let's get our clips in here. So there is like a little cutout in these pistons on each side, which kind of gives you a place for your needle nose. So what I try and do is grab it at the tip of the needle nose as much as I can, and then start on one side. With it in the groove, and then work it around. So that my needle nose are in that groove there. Looks like I can work this side a little more. So I'm close. Sometimes you need a screwdriver to give a little push. Like I said, these can be a little tricky sometimes. And you don't want to overbend them because you don't want to make them oblong. Oh, let's start over. I think I had a better starting point that time. And that side's in, looks like. Yep. Now we get the other side in. These things are a little tricky. Sometimes I remember how I did it and it goes right in. Sometimes how did I do that? Okay, bending over on my back. gonna have to get my chair. My back is hurting. There we go. All right, clips are in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and verify ring gap just one more time just to be safe, because if I have to modify those rings at all, I want to do it now. Obviously I don't want to find out later. So I'm going to go ahead and take our 20 over rings. There's also a reason I'm doing this one first, because I don't want to mix the rings up with the standard ones. And I'm going to check the gap on each one each time. So it's going to take a little bit of time. See, I can probably just tilt this over a little bit. That makes it easier as long as my crankshaft doesn't fall out. I did say I was going to put a couple bolts in there. I should probably do that. These are also labeled 0.50, which is 0.002 over metric. Now those are that's the only wrist pin and everything. The rest is just going to get rings. So the rest is really cleaning pistons to make sure they're ready to go. And even in the old ones, you know, I'm going to still get a little of my special lube down inside here, right, on my wrist pins as much as I can, because I want to make sure they're nice and lubricated. And you can kind of slide the rod back and forth, kind of mix it up in there, and then flip it over and get a little more on the other side. Slop it on there a little bit. Right, you can't spin it all the way around because it's a piston pin, but at least I can get it in there really good. So now we're ready to check our ring gap, so let's do that next. I'm going to sit down a little more here. Get our feeler gauge out. So let's see. We were at we wanted to be at 11, 12 thousandths, right? So I'm going to pull my 11 thousandths, my 12, and my 10 out here. And let's go ahead and put our first ring in. Now it's all nice and slippery now. Before we were doing it dry, and you know, it just went right in and kind of held in its spot. So we want to make sure it's straight. Now let's check our ring gap, because we can always adjust this ring gap. 10 goes right in. 11 is tight. 12 is tighter, but still going in. And I got 13. Doesn't hold in there, but I got 13. Let's check that book one more time. I'd just rather be safe than sorry is what my mom always told me. Let's check the book. Let's see what we got here in our specifications. It's the one that's all dirty. So let's see. Piston rings, end gap, 92 to 03, so 0.012 to 0.016, and we're at 0.013. So we're on the lower end. You know, the limit is 0.024, so that's going to wear in a little bit too, of course. So we're going to lose a little bit on that wear in, but 13, that's right above the low end of the spec. I'm happy with that. So did I write it down somewhere? I should write it down, right? This way. So I'll put it here at 250 horsepower, Yamaha, that's good enough, I'll remember. 0.012 to 0.016 and a 0.024 limit. So if you remember, we already know we went through these, all of these, and we knew that they were really close together, within a couple thousandths of each other. So we're ready to go ahead and start installing pistons now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get some oil in my grooves where my rings are going to go. Some of my somebody else's famous concoction. I'm going to put a little on our rings too. Make sure everything's nice and coated. I don't know how long this motor is going to sit for, so I want to make sure everything is nice and coated. Now there is a groove on the end of this ring, a concave. Right now it's on the bottom side. Flip it over, it's concave on this side because there's a pin that lines up with, right? So what I want to do is the pin is on the top. Also, the writing is always on the top of these. Sometimes it says top. I bet you the standard rings say top on them. We'll check that. But I want to make sure I put these in this way. And they're the same rings, top and bottom. So I see my locating pin here on my piston. So I want to go ahead and slip this over. Get it on the back side first. And then let her rip. And that one's in place. Now we're going to go ahead and get the next one. Find my locating pin. And then we'll get this one in place. Right? So these rings are ready to go. What I'm going to do next is get my ring compressor out. I do keep this in a plastic bag because I don't want it to get dirty sitting in my toolbox, and it's also always very well lubricated. Forgot the tool, so we'll go ahead and open this up. I'm going to put a little lube in here. Even though it's lubed, I'm going to add some more. Always add fresh lube to it each time I use it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and there's a top and bottom to this. It has a little ridge that sticks out that hits the top of that cylinder, the top of where the head mounts on the top of the cylinder. So I want to look at my rings, make sure they're lined up on the pins. I don't want it off the pin because then when we tighten this, it's not going to close down on the piston all the way. So I want to make sure it's open enough to go over that, and then I'm going to hold it with my finger. Notice I'm not going all the way down. I just need to cover the rings. And then I'm going to tighten this up. And that's squeezing my rings closed. And now this is ready to be installed. So I'm going to use the back of my hammer because it's rubber. When I tap this in, I can look at it and see that there's no gaps around it, right? That it's fitting on there nicely, right? And now I want to check and I want to position this, right? My arrow needs to go to my exhaust port. So I'm going to double check. This should be my exhaust port here. And I'm going to double check with my flash my light, just because I like to do it once. I knew this guy Bob, he always said it's always faster to do it once. And that is my exhaust port. No, my exhaust port is here. See, I'm glad I checked because I was thinking wrong. This is my intake port. That's my exhaust port. So that's why you do these things. That's why you go through those double checks. Now I'm going to flip this over because my exhaust port is going down, right? And now I realize where I labeled this is the opposite way. So usually I mark it top and bottom to make sure, but it shouldn't really make a difference. I do like to put my caps and everything back on in the same orientation. So I'm going to take this off and put it back so the bearing's going to ride in the same way it did before. So let's take the tape off now. Remember, we had this all wrapped up, keeping it clean. I did not run these bearings through the parts washer. No reason to. They did have a fine coat of oil. Now, if the motor had damage, you know, like metal shooting through it or something like that, or if I see little metal bits in this bearing, I will go ahead and wash it out really good. But I didn't see any of that. Looks like whatever, you know, went through the motor didn't come through this side. But let's double check and see. So the first thing I want to be careful of that I do is I want to make sure I put this cap on exactly the way it came off. So the orientation I'm holding it in right now, I'm going to keep it there. So let's take a look here. I don't see any damage to this at all. I see a nice fine coating of two-stroke oil. So all I'm going to do is go ahead and put the oil here, but I'm also going to put some oil down into these threads because I'm going to have to torque these down ultimately, and I want to make sure they slide really nicely. I'm also going to lube up this bearing a little bit too. Make sure, now again, if this had metal bits or if it was all dirty from that piston going bad, then I would have go ahead and redid that. I'm going to get some oil on my threads of each bolt. Right? I'm keeping this cap in the same orientation as how it came off, right? And I'm going to put some oil on this. Make sure it's coated nicely. And on my bearings. Now, a lot of guys, you like to replace bearings. I'm not against it. You can certainly do that. But if these are fine and they're work hardened in, you should have years of success. So now we're pretty much ready to install this. So I want to go ahead and take my piston. Now I don't want to jam it in and chip the cylinder wall, so I want to carefully slide this in. Make sure I have my arrow going to my port side exhaust port, right? Making sure that's set up properly. Slide it in. Now I'm going to come here and I'm going to grab it with my finger because I don't want to tap it in and have the rod hit something accidentally. So now I'm just going to go ahead and tap her in. Now I know I'm past it, so I won't hit anything. Nice and easy. Now the piston's in place. Now we can open this up for the next one. And let's see here. I'm going to hold the piston there, roll this back. We probably didn't have to roll it up that high, but I'm going to go ahead and crank my crankshaft around, right? Everything turns nice and smooth. By the way, that's something we didn't check, but everything should turn nice and smooth before you start installing, and then each one you go through, it should still roll nicely, you know, through nice and smooth each time you put each piston in. All right, so I'm going to start with the first lubed up bearing. Put it in here. And bring the piston up all the way. And then put the next bearing. And then put our cap on. So now I know it went the same orientation. If you remember, I let you guys know that this is drilled. This is one piece, the connecting rod, and they drill through here and then they crack it. So it's a rough surface here and it has to line up exactly from the way it came off. Well, something's binding up a little bit now. I think it's just the connecting rod, so I'm just going to take my time and put this back. I'm going to take this, push it back down. It's like it's not lined up right on my crankshaft here for some reason. So let me work this back. It felt like something was not seating correctly. So let me slide the piston all the way in and out, and that works nicely. Let me take the bearing out. Maybe I had it a little twist in it when I was putting it in. And let's line it up. Okay, that goes all the way up there. That's bottoming out, so that should be good. It might have had a little twist in it when I was doing it. So let's put the bearing back in. Okay, and to put the top bearing back in, we probably just had it a little cocked in there. And now we'll put this on, and that lines up sweetly. So I'm not going to crank these bolts down all the way yet, and I'm just going to get them to meet up, and then I want to rotate the assembly. So this takes an 8mm 12-point socket for this to go together. I do have an Ace Hardware one that cracked, lifetime guaranteed, so they gave me a new one, which I was very happy. But it is very thin, and it kind of has to be thin wall socket because it has to fit inside here really well. So I'm just going to use my little 1/4 inch. This way I can't possibly get a lot of torque on it, you know. This way I just get these lined up. Okay, so the surfaces are meeting now, and I'm not going to give it too much. I'm just going to give it a little, just to hold it in place, because I also want to line these up and make sure they're lined up properly before I start rotating this. So right now my back side seems to be lined up, but my front side is giving me a little off. So I'm making sure I have this lined up evenly. That feels better. There we go. All right. So now that we got that nice and lined up evenly, we're just going to rotate the assembly. We want to make sure there's no binding anywhere, right? And that goes nice and easy. All right, so now we're basically ready for the next piston. So we got to clean them up. So that'll be in our next episode. We're going to go ahead and do some parts washing on some of those other pistons there, and we'll get this side in, and then we'll start working on the other side. So please like, subscribe. Don't forget, today's video is brought to you by the Ansel MR500 diagnostic tool for your Yamaha. They make one for Suzuki and Mercury one. Stay tuned. I'm supposed to get it pretty soon. I have an Optimax and I have a EFI Mercury that we're going to hook up to, and I have the old Mercury scan tool, and we're going to compare side by side. So stay tuned. And don't forget, click the link in the description below for your discount on the Ansel MR500 diagnostic tool. And also don't forget my used outboard motor buying guides for sale on Amazon right now. It's not a deep dive. It is a grab and go for the details you need to look for to make sure you're not buying a dud. Have a great day.